Welcome to this Introduction to Music Fundamentals B video on chord positions and labeling. In the last video, we learned about triads. And now we're going to look a little bit more deeply at how triads work and what their properties are. So let's take a look at the screen now. And you'll see that I have put 3 triads on the screen. The first one, the bottom note is a C, the second note is an E, and the third note is a G. If we look at the second triad, it starts on an E, then it has a G, and then the C is at the top. And in the third triad, we start with a G at the bottom, then we have a C, and then an E above them. Now what you'll notice is that all of these triads have the same notes, C, E, and G. But the bottom note in each case is different. Okay, so we call these different positions of a triad. All triads, quartads, and quintads can be in different positions. That means that their notes are not necessarily always starting on the root. Remember, the root is the note on which the triad is based from the scale that it comes. Okay, so let's have a look at how these things work. Here is that picture that I showed you last time. The note on which the triad is based is called its root. Then we have the third above it and the fifth at the top. If we're working in C, C, E, and G. And the note that is at the bottom of the triad is called its base. Okay, so using those things, let's have a look at those 3 chords again. All triads can be in 3 positions. The first position is root position. That is where the root of the triad is in the bass, just like the picture that we had before. Then the position can be first inversion. That is when the third is in the bass. Then we can also get second inversion. That's where the fifth is in the bass. Let's have a look at a picture representation of that. So you'll see on the far left-hand side is root position. That's where the root note of the triad is at the bottom, the third is above it, and the fifth is above that. Okay. First inversion is where the third of the triad is now its base. That means that the bottom note is the third. You'll see that the root note has gone up above it, and the fifth stays where it is. In the second inversion of the triad, the fifth is the bass. The fifth is the bass, and the root and the third are above it. So there are 3 different positions. And if I was to play them to you on the piano now, you'd hear that they each sound the same, but different because the bass note is not the root always. Okay? So we've got root position, first inversion, and second inversion. Now, how do we label them? We've already learned that we use Roman numerals to label the chords. If we were in C major, we would label all of those chords that we've just looked at, all of those triads, as chord 1, because they all have C, E, and G in them. How do we indicate that they have different positions? Well, let's learn about that quickly now. So usually the position of a triad is indicated by stating the intervals from the bass to the other 2 notes in the triad. So in root position, the second note above it, so there's the E, if we're working with chord C, E, G, the second note in the chord, which is E, is a third above the bass. Okay, C, E, G. And the top note is a fifth above it, C, D, E, F, G. All right? So there are 2 intervals, a third and a fifth. So we could write it out as chord 1, 5, 3. But in practice, the root position chords do not require any numbers at all. So if you just see a chord label with no numbers next to it, just chord 1, then it is in root position. So if you just see the Roman numeral with no numbers next to it, it is in the root position. In jazz notation, a triad in the root position remains unchanged. So if it is a C chord, if it is a triad based on C, it will simply just be C on its own. If a triad is in its first inversion, that means that the second note of the triad is now its bass. We do exactly the same thing now. All right, so we start with E, that's the bass note now, and we go up to the second note. E, F, G. It's a third, okay? And if we go up now from E to C, E, F, G, A, B, C. It's a sixth, okay? So a chord in first inversion is usually labeled 1, or whatever chord it is, 6, 3. 6, 3. That indicates that the notes are a third and a sixth above the bass. Okay. However, in practice, first inversion triads usually only have the little 6 and not the 3. So if you see chord 2, 6, it means in the key that you're working in, chord 2, it's going to be in its first inversion. It's not with its root at the bottom. The second note is in the bass. In jazz notation, a first inversion triad is written like this. It's got a C, let's say we're working with the chord C, a slash, and then it tells us what the bass note is, E. Okay, so we've got the C chord, the slash tells us that the bass note is an E. So instead of playing C with your left hand in the piano, you would play an E. Okay, so that the bass is an E. All right, then second inversion triads. If you look at this, the second inversion triad, the intervals from the bass are a fourth and the sixth. So let's just have a look at that. We're working with the C chord, C, E, G, but G is now the bass note. Let's call this G, okay? G going up to C, G, A, B, C is a fourth, okay? And G going to E, G, A, B, C, D, E is a sixth. So if you see something that says 1, 6, 4, it means that it's in second inversion. Or if you see 4, 6, 4, or 7, 6, 4, or 3, 6, 4, it means that that chord is in its second inversion. It's not being written with the root as the bass. It's not being written with the third as the bass. It's being written with the fifth as the bass. In jazz notation, a second inversion triad is labeled like this. It's got a C to indicate what kind of chord it is. Okay. In this case, we're working with a C chord. It's based on C. And then the note that is in the bass is after that, G. Okay. If you were working with an F chord, for example, and it was in second inversion, it would be F and then C just after that, because C is F, A, C is the chord, and C is the last note of it. Okay, now here's a little summary just to help you. In Western staff notation, if you look at the top table, you'll see the Western staff notation version. Chord 1 in root position has no numbers in it. Okay, it's just chord 1. In first inversion, it just has a little 6 next to it. And in this case, when we're working with chord C, it means that the E is in the bass. Then if we look at the second inversion triad, if it says 6, 4 next to it, then the G of the triad must be at the bottom. This works for all the different triads, by the way. I've just used chord 1 in C major as an example, but you could get F major, G major, C sharp major. All of those keys would work in exactly the same way, and all of their triads would work in the same way. The second table is of jazz notation. So Root position is just the name of the chord that you're working with. In this case, it's the C triad. In first inversion, C slash, and then the bass note, E. And the second inversion, the name of the chord, C slash, and then its bass note, G. And that is where we end this particular video.